The minimum wage is very significant. The minimum wage is extremely important to human well-being. Increasing the minimum wage is very important. Increasing the minimum wage improves human well-being massively. By definition, the poorest legal workers are on the minimum wage. By definition, the people who need money the most are often on the minimum wage. The mainstream political right despises the idea of increasing the minimum wage. This is because the mainstream political right is nothing more than a vessel for the interests of big money. This is because the mainstream political right is nothing but an ideological legitimization of big money interests. The mainstream political right is a little more than a vehicle for the interests of the wealthy. They hate the thought of increasing the minimum wage because such a thing would decrease the profit of the people who fund their political movement. The mainstream political right likes to downplay the significance of the minimum wage. They will point out that only a small minority of workers are paid the minimum wage. They will seek to portray the minimum wage as insignificant. Only a smaller percentage of the workforce is on the minimum wage. They say this as if suffering and poverty is perfectly acceptable so long as it only impacts a small minority. They dismiss the suffering of the few on the basis that the few do not matter. They will promote indifference and inaction on the basis that the well-being of a minority is not important. It is disgusting. And their claims about the number of people impacted by the minimum wage are always incorrect. They will argue that increasing the minimum wage is not important because only a smaller number of workers are on the minimum wage. They do not understand that many businesses pride themselves on paying their workers something just above the minimum wage. Countless businesses pay their employees a wage that is slightly higher than the minimum wage. They do this so that they can say they are not minimum wage employers. They do this in order to offer something slightly more. When you increase the minimum wage, you do not simply increase the wages of minimum wage workers. You increase the wages of a great many other employees whose employers like to stay just above the minimum wage. If a company likes to pay their workers $1 above the minimum wage, an increase in the minimum wage may result in a wage increase for the employees of that company. The impact of the minimum wage being increased is not limited to minimum wage employees. Many other employees benefit. It could even be said that increasing the minimum wage increases the standard for wages broadly. Employers who pay something greater than a minimum wage are forced to increase their wages. An increased minimum wage can have greater consequences than many seem to realize. Many employers pay their employees something just above the minimum wage. If you increase the minimum wage, many of these employers will increase the wages of their workers to maintain that superiority. The political right loves to talk about how only a small number of workers are on the minimum wage. The minimum wage is not just about the people who are on the minimum wage. It impacts other workers too. And even if the minimum wage only impacted minimum wage employees, we should increase it anyway. The well-being of the minority is important. A minority does not deserve poverty and destitution simply for being a minority. The minimum wage is significant. The minimum wage should be increased.